guys! For your portfolio for this unit, you are going to be asked to go to each one of the articles that you selected for your issue and to copy and paste the citation into your portfolio document. This is a helpful method of record keeping so that you can find those articles again in future. However, there are a couple of things to keep in mind moving forward, and especially as we move towards your research paper. The first thing to know is even though copying and pasting references or works cited entries can save you time, it can actually create a bigger headache for you because many of the references or works cited entries that are pre-built, it doesn't matter where they are. They can be in the databases, they can be on articles that you look at. They're either in the wrong style, they are in the wrong version, the wrong edition of that style, they're missing information, or information in them is incorrectly presented. So in addition to learning good record keeping skills, it's vital to understand what information is required to build a proper reference. And then as you move forward, you may either build your own references, or if you choose to copy and paste them, you can fix whatever is incorrect in those references. So for today, I'm just going to tell you what information is useful to write down when you're looking at a source so that you can build a reference for it later. I'm going to go down here in the corner and we'll take a look. So you guys remember that I was looking at cursive writing. This is one of this is the issue. These are my articles. I have them open up above. If I go into one of these articles, I can look at this and I can go to where it says cite right here. So if I click on this, it's going to say, here's your citation. It automatically goes to MLA 8th edition. It can export it to Noodle Tools or EasyBib. I'm going to go down here and choose from the list. APA is now in its 7th edition, and the other guidance that you have received has to do with APA 7th edition style. This database doesn't include that. So if you click on the only APA option, this is the previous style. That's the first thing that you need to know. So for this week for your portfolio, you're just going to take this, you're going to copy and paste it straight into your portfolio. That's all you have to do. However, coming back up here to the top, I'm going to tell you guys, as I said, what you need to actually create a proper APA style reference. The first thing that you need to note is the author or authors of the source. So for every source that you look at that you consider using in a research paper, you want to record this information. The authors of this particular article are Melanie Burney and Kristen Graham. So I'm going to put in Burney, M, and Graham, Kristen, whoops, K, S. We have her middle initial, so I'm going to record that. You want to give as much as you have for the author's name. Now for APA, I know that we only use last names and initials, so that's all I recorded. But if you want to write out the full names, absolutely do so. You want to make sure that you have all of the initials and anything extra, like if somebody is a junior or, you know, John Smith III, be sure to make note of that. It's important. The next thing that you want is the fullest publication date you can get. In this case, this was published on January 12th, 2020. Notice that they abbreviated it. I'm not going to abbreviate it. Why? Because I know personally that in APA style, they don't abbreviate month names. So that's also an important thing to look at. If we come down here to our citation, and we look at APA 6th edition style, notice that it's abbreviated here, which means that this reference is not correct. It wasn't even correct for the 6th edition. Why does that happen? It happens because these references or works cited entries are built by algorithms or by people who are not necessarily experts in the style. So they have a template in front of them, or the algorithm has a sort of fill in the blanks thing that it goes through. And so it just grabs information and puts it in place. So when it looks at this, it says, look, this is abbreviated. So it puts in the abbreviation. In order for you to be accurate to the style, remember, as we talked about in Unit 2.1, your precision, your attention to detail, your ability to follow directions, you need to know that this is not correct. And if you do copy and paste that reference, you will need to fix that later down the line. Okay, the next thing that we need is the full title of the article, okay? The title of the article given here is this, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it. Let's see if I can do it. Yep, without formatting. That's great. In Google Docs, if you hit Control-Shift-V, it will strip the formatting. If I don't do that, it's going to do this, which is a huge mess. So Control-Shift-V will paste it in without that. Now, I also know, this will save me time later, that APA style uses lowercase, okay, it's called sentence case, for article titles. So if I fix that now, later when I'm building my reference, I can just stick it right in there and I don't have to make that correction later. Okay, if you have any proper names in here, people's names or the name of a country, etc., you would capitalize it. Otherwise, it's just here in lowercase. This ellipsis does appear in the title, so you are going to keep that ellipsis over here. The next thing that you want to look for is whether this article lives inside of a larger publication. So sometimes you're looking at a journal article, you're looking at maybe a chapter from a book, you're looking at an article from a newspaper or something from a web page. In this case, this came from the newspaper, the Philadelphia Inquirer. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to Control-Shift-V, paste it over here. Okay. You also want to look for a volume number. So if you're looking at a journal article or if you're looking at a book that's published in more than one volume, say you're looking at an encyclopedia, right? And you usually have like volume A, volume B, volume C. If you have a volume number, be sure to record it. Here we're looking at a newspaper article, so we don't have to worry about that. Next, we want to look for the issue number. This is usually for journals, right? Maybe this is issue 1 for the year, or maybe it's issue number, 356 if they've been publishing this for a long time. You won't find this for things other than maybe magazines or journals. You also want to look for page numbers. If this was ever published in print, sometimes they'll tell you which page numbers it fell on. There are no page numbers appearing here, so we're going to skip that, but be sure to look, especially in journal articles, book chapters, that kind of thing. Look for page numbers and be sure to write them down. You're going to need them. The next thing that you want to look for is the edition number. If you're, if you are looking at books, because books, sometimes there's a first edition, right? A second edition, a third edition. Boy, I'm really having trouble with that, aren't I? Let me try this one more time. The edition number is important because sometimes books are edited between their editions. So it might be different. Say if you have the first edition and somebody else has the third edition, a word may have changed, a chapter may have been removed, etc. So it's important to let the reader know which version you were looking at. Okay, also for books, you want to get the publisher name. Okay, who published that book? Sometimes also the rights for certain books, when they come into the public domain, for instance, they belong to several different publishers. So let's say something like Moby Dick. When the copyright restrictions are up for Moby Dick, then suddenly Penguin wants to publish it, or Random House wants to publish it, or Norton wants to publish it, right? These are all different publishing houses. Every edition then is going to have maybe a different size of typeface. They're going to use different fonts. They're going to use different page margins. And so because of that, the material is going to fall on different pages. So you want to tell the reader which publishing house to look for and then which page to look at when they're reading Moby Dick in order for them to find exactly the information that you were looking at. Okay, all of this information, all the information in the reference is to help get the reader exactly back to where you were. It's to get them to the exact source in the exact same place that you were looking at. Another thing to look at, you want to check and see if there are other significant contributors. So sometimes if you're looking at, say, a poetry anthology or a story anthology, maybe you're taking American literature and you're using those big Norton anthologies, is there a main editor of that book? Or if you're looking at a collection of stories or something like that, sometimes articles published by somebody who's in another country, many times there's a translator, and a translator is a really important contributor because part of what comes through is the translator's understanding of what the other writer was writing. So we need to note if there was a translator for that information. The last thing we need is a URL, or even better, if you have it, a digital object identifier, a DOI. These articles that you're looking at right now do not have DOIs. I didn't find any on any of the articles, but if you're looking around at your articles, they usually begin 10 dot, like 10 something, and then they might have, say, a J, and then an abbreviated version of the journal's name, and then some kind of number for, like, the date of publication. It might look like this, etc. Sometimes they're really long, sometimes they're pretty short like this, but this is what a DOI looks like. So if you encounter one of these on an article that you're looking at, be sure to grab it. These are more powerful than a URL. They're basically, somebody described them once as the VIN number of articles. So if you've got a car, you know that your car has a VIN number, vehicle identification number. No other car in the world has that number. Just like that, no other article in the world has this number. So if you have the number, you can always get exactly back to the article. Anytime you're looking at sources that you're considering for a paper, you want to look for this information and write down any of it that you can find so that when it comes time to write the reference, it will go very quickly. Also, please remember that if you need help with any of this stuff, you can check in with your instructor or the writing lab, and we can also provide resources to help you find the information you need.